Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of our podcast. The title of our episode today is Lost in Translation.
So, as you can imagine, when you speak different languages and you're from different cultures, sometimes there can be some real misunderstandings and you can get a bit confused. Sometimes one or the other can hear something, perhaps because of a mispronunciation or an accent. So, there's been lots of occasions in our 26 years together that we've had things lost in translation.
Okay, before we go into that, it's just, for example, something as simple as I remember once Alec told me, don't be stupid. And I got mad. I just went to the roof, down, up and down. I was so upset because when you say someone in Spanish is stupido, it's quite strong. But in English, it's not that strong. But at that moment, I took it really bad, didn't I?
Yes, she did. She did a Bruce Lee leap across the bedroom and kicked the bedroom door shut. Yeah, that was quite a good language lesson, that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the first.
But I want to share with you the experience that I had of my first Spanish lesson with Patty, because I didn't speak a word of Spanish. We met at university in Manchester, and there was this amazing Colombian woman, and after a few months of going out, she decided that she was going to introduce me to one of her friends. So we took the train to Manchester, and on the way up, she said, I want you to learn how to say nice to meet you in Spanish. I'm like, fantastic. So Patty teaches me this phrase, and I'm practicing on the train as we're going up. And I'm like, how am I doing, darling? Am I getting it right?
Yes, everything fine, baby. You just have to pronounce the last word really strong, but that's fine. That you're getting the message. Yeah.
Yeah. So we arrived to the bar where we're meeting Patty's friend. And I walk up to this nice lady, and I say to her, me gusta tus tetas, thinking I'm saying nice to meet you. But what I was actually saying was,
I love your kids. And the funny thing is, my friend looked at me like, what the heck? And I told her in Spanish, and we said, get it. So everything was fine at that moment.
So, as you can imagine, I never trusted Patty to give me another Spanish lesson.
That was the first one. Anyway, but when you talk about the mispronunciation of certain words in English, I want to say that one in Spanish. It's easier. Sometimes when you say, when it's como caliente, how do you say it?
Horny.
No, the other word.
Oh, warm, hot.
Exactly. And how do you say lombriz?
Worm.
You see, it's something very similar. So we are going to talk to you, we are going to tell you something very intimate. We're with Alec, and we're finishing our passion. And of course, because those two words are very similar, for me, instead of saying, I love the warmth of your body, I told Alec, I love the warmth of your body. In other words, I told him, me gusta tu lombriz, instead of saying, me gusta el calor de tu cuerpo. So you can imagine how he felt. Like, oh my God, what this woman, when she's telling me that I have a little lombriz. So, yeah. And he's still with me, so he loves me.
Yeah, she says to me, I like the worm of your body. I'm like, what? Well, I mean, I'm not a, you know, I'm not a horse, but you know.
Una lombriz.
So just a little change in pronunciation can have a big impact.
Mhm.
And something as well with it's not just spoken language, it's body language, it's hand movements, and it's this.
In Colombia, when we point to something, it's like, it's there, around there. So, of course, Ale was like, what? Hola, it's there. So, there you are. But what about the hands? In Spanish, you can say dos. But in English,
You don't do this in England. You do this, unless you want to fight. But that's pretty universal. It's not just with Colombians. Even if you go to the US or other places, people are very happy to do that. It's only the English that get upset. And if you don't know why, go and Google it. There's a long history behind why the V to us has that reaction up yours.
That's true.
Yeah.
Do you remember the time when Alec went to Colombia, met my family, of course, because he wanted to ask hand. And my mom and my sister, they took me to the hairdressers, and Alec was at the back of the car. They left me there, and the first thing my mom did was, what did she say?
So I want you to imagine I'm jet lagged. I'm just getting to know these people. My first time in Colombia, don't speak the language. My girlfriend has just got out of the car. I'm there with my future mother-in-law and my sister-in-law. And my mother-in-law, she's a strong lady, no messing around. And she turns around, pivots around on the seat, and she starts talking to me in Spanish with my sister-in-law translating. And she's like, right. Even with the finger movement, she's like, right, looking at me. You need to know these things about my daughter. She's stubborn, she's headstrong, she's loving, she's kind, she's caring, she's this, she's that, she's the other. And she's giving it this in Spanish, and my sister-in-law is translating. And I'm sat there like, okay. And she's like, oh, I want you to know everything from her mother's mouth because there's no returns and there's no guarantee.
In other words, we're going to get rid of her, so you have to stay with her forever. No complaints. We have been honest. So, yeah.
And here we are 25 years later, and everything she said was true. Stubborn, headstrong, loving, caring.
That's it. So we're still together. And sometimes we wonder how we're still together because sometimes we cannot understand each other. Believe me, it's a challenge sometimes.
And one of the things that it's not just being English and Colombian and speaking Spanish and English. We've also lived in other countries. So when you take our two cultures and our two languages, and then you go and live in another country, even Spanish-speaking countries like Chile, Ecuador, Spain, where we've also lived, here in Panama, even in Montenegro and in Singapore, you're then interpreting your interactions with those cultures and those languages through your own cultural lens. And then the other person's interpreting it in their cultural way. And then you've got to try and find, again, new understanding and meaning in these other countries and cultures.
Yeah. I remember, for example, the people in Singapore, they're really polite. They're lovely people. But of course, in a way, I remember like in England, when you go to Latin countries like Panama, I think, Colombia, you're a touch person. Yeah. You have to touch. And for us, it's normal to say to someone, come on, don't worry about it. Right. But in England or in Singapore, it's the opposite. When you touch someone, it's like, my God, why you are trespassing that barrier there? And that was a challenge for me because sometimes, I don't know, we speak with the mouth, of course, but sometimes we speak with the hands as well, or at least in my case. So when you try to approach someone and touch that person, it was a shock for them. So I have to learn how to control myself and not to touch the people or approach that person in such a way.
Yeah, and that was something for me, again, moving to Colombia when we first moved there. Coming from the UK and working in schools, you do not touch the children. Not even a hand on the shoulder, definitely not a hug, no arms around the shoulders, nothing like that. You don't touch children, safeguarding. And I get to Colombia and the kids are coming up and they're shaking my hand and they're giving me a hug and they're giving me kisses on the cheek. And I'm like, stop touching me.
I remember when Alec used to come home, I said, this girl, they did this and this to me. I said, yes, honey, that's fine. It's not a problem. This is our culture, so don't worry about it. But that is the shock of a culture, right?
Yeah.
For them, it's like, no, because it's like safeguarding, it's like respect. And for us, it's the opposite. We just work hard, and it's because it's warm for us. It's nice. It's like welcome the person, but that's one of the difference.
So again, some of my senior students sat me down with some of the teachers and said, look, this is normal. We like to be warm and to say hi, and you can say hi, and you can give us an arm around the shoulder, and all of that kind of thing is fine. So those things again, that translation, that understanding of the language and the culture, that can lead to some real challenges sometimes.
I remember even when I went to Colombia. It was 2000 to ask for my hand. I was on. It was on fashion. Sorry, that song of Gorilla, and you can imagine Latins. We're in a party, and my parents and everybody, and that start to play that song, and everybody was like, oh, 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 oh. So you can imagine, for us was normal. And they was like, what the heck is going on in this house? They're becoming monkeys. But this is part of the Latin culture, right? So yeah. It was nice.
But that's very true. Like you go to a nightclub or a bar in England, and people will dance in their groups, and there's this kind of like space between you and the next group or you and the next person. You know, there's this real understanding of personal space, even queuing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where in other cultures you don't get that.
Yeah,
you know, in Colombia you go to it. There's a famous bar called Andres Cana de Rez, best party ever. And like literally, you're just being, jostled around and moving around with everybody else, because it's just that kind of environment.
Yeah, that's I suppose again is like how we brought up, right? Like you are just warm and dance. For us, it doesn't matter that you have that personal contact. For us, we see it as normal. So it was nice to see that difference. Even when we went talking about that, when we went to Japan, right? We went to the onsens. And there, the Latin were very touchy about what is our bodies. We are more conservative, right? So we went to the onsen, and they give you a little towel. And that little towel, it doesn't go here, it doesn't go there. It's just to put in your head because you have to clean yourself properly before you go into the bath. But it's amazing because how the Latin, we are open in that way. They're very conservative. So it was a nice experience as well in Japan.
So what do you think's been the most difficult thing for you in terms of like learning English and improving your English?
I think it's the different meanings of certain words. It's how it's like one word can mean different meanings. And even, again, as we talked before, the pronunciation of certain words, it's like when you say Coke and Coke. It's a big difference between them, which I know now, but if you go to a shop like, give me a Coke, they look at you like, wow, you give me a Coke, that's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the same again in Spanish, because Spanish is a very phonetic language, but you have an additional letter in your alphabet that we don't have, which is the ñ. And you also do that thing with your R, which again, that can be a real challenge sometimes to R, and to get the ñ right.
Yeah.
And again, in Spanish, there are 14 conjugations of the verb. So there's a formal and an informal and a group. And there's a degree, there's a more formal or a less formal way to conjugate the verbs.
And you mean the two on usted? There's a big difference, and it's different that you don't have it in English. Yeah.
So all of those things make learning Spanish really interesting, and make it, it's a very dynamic language because it's constantly changing, because a lot of the language in the world is being driven by English. So then without turning it into Spanglish, you've got to come up with an equivalent word.
Yeah. Now you remind me, one of the most difficult things I think in another language, funny enough, is comedy. It's the humor.
Yeah.
How you approach humor, because it's completely different. I mean, even the British humor, I love it, but because I understand the culture now, it's very dry, very like black, very dark. But languages are different, but I think the most difficult challenge is the humor of the culture.
Yeah, I agree. So
that's it then.
That's it. So that's Lost in Translation. So what we want to do is, this should be interactive. We want you to share with us. Have you had a similar experience? Are you in a relationship where you speak different languages, you're from different cultures? Have you been on holiday and had a moment where you've said something, where you've got your little phrase book and you said, meant to say thank you, but you've said something else instead? So share your experiences with us in the comments.
Even if you speak the same language, but you are from Colombia and the other one is from Chile, it's a big difference, or different examples. So yeah, we would like to hear from you.
Okay, and tune in for episode number 2, Culture Clash or Just Marriage.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. See you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.